Hello, my dear listeners. Close your eyes now. Let your body sink into the mattress. Feel the weight of your blankets and just listen to the sound of my voice. I'm going to tell you a story that begins in a quiet little town, much like your own. This is the story of a girl named Emily. Emily was a quiet 16-year-old girl who lived in a sleepy suburban house. She had a peculiar fascination with mirrors. Her room was filled with them. A large vanity mirror, a full-length mirror on the closet door, even small handheld mirrors scattered on her dresser. Her mother would often tell her, "Emily, honey, why so many mirrors? It's not healthy. You'll get lost in them one day." But Emily would just laugh it off. "Mom, they just show the truth, that's all." One rainy Saturday, Emily was exploring a dusty antique shop when she found it. Tucked away in a corner was an ornate, gilded mirror. Its glass was smoky, and its silver backing was tarnished with age. It had a strange pull to it. Without a second thought, she bought it and carried it home. That night, after her parents had gone to sleep, Emily unwrapped the mirror and hung it on the wall opposite her bed. She stood before it, brushing her long brown hair. 100 strokes, like always. And that's when she saw it. In the dim light of her bedside lamp, she noticed something impossible. Her reflection was out of sync. When she paused her brushing, the reflection in the antique mirror continued for just a fraction of a second longer, a delayed echo. She blinked, shook her head, and chalked it up to being tired. She turned off the light and went to sleep. The next morning, as the sun streamed into her room, Emily sat up in bed and stretched. Her eyes drifted to the new mirror, and her blood ran cold. Her reflection was already sitting up in the bed, and it was smiling at her, a wide, unnatural smile that she knew she wasn't making. With a gasp, she scrambled out of bed, her heart hammering against her ribs. She grabbed a large bed sheet and threw it over the mirror, her hands trembling. She told herself it was a trick of the light, her sleepy mind playing games. But that's when the real disturbances began. That night, she was woken by a sound. Tap. 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 It was the gentle sound of a fingernail tapping on glass. It was coming from under the sheet covering the mirror. She lay frozen in bed, paralyzed with fear, until the sound finally stopped at the first light of dawn. The following night, it was worse. She felt a presence in her room. The feeling of being watched was so intense it was suffocating. She pulled the covers over her head, praying for morning to come. On the third night, she woke up from a deep sleep with a start. The room was ice cold, and she could feel it, a weight on the edge of her bed, as if someone had just sat down. She slowly, fearfully opened her eyes. The sheet was still over the mirror, but then she saw it. From beneath the bottom of the sheet, a pale, slender hand was emerging. It was crawling slowly, deliberately, across her carpet towards her bed. Emily tried to scream, but no sound came out. She could only watch, horrified, as the cold, spectral hand reached her bed frame. It slid over the edge, and its icy fingers gently, softly brushed against her cheek. The touch was like frozen marble. The next morning, Emily ran to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. There, on her left cheek, was a faint, gray mark. It looked like a smudge of frost, a cold burn. No matter how hard she scrubbed, It wouldn't come off. It was a reminder. A reminder that something from the other side of the glass had touched her, and it was waiting to do more than just touch. The mark on Emily's cheek did not fade. It stayed, a pale gray smudge against her skin, a permanent reminder of that icy touch. She tried to cover it with makeup, but the foundation seemed to slide right off, as if the mark itself refused to be hidden. She avoided her room as much as possible, spending her afternoons in the brightly lit kitchen or the bustling living room, but nightfall was inescapable. Her parents noticed her quiet anxiety. "You've been jumpy lately, sweetie," her mother said one evening over dinner. "Is everything okay? School stress?" Emily just nodded, pushing her peas around her plate. How could she possibly explain? They'd think she was crazy. They'd never believe that the beautiful antique mirror she'd been so proud of was now a prison wall, holding something terrible on the other side. That night, she propped a chair against her bedroom door before getting into bed. It was a futile gesture, she knew. The thing in her room didn't need doors. It was already inside. She lay awake for hours, staring at the sheet-draped mirror, her ears straining for any sound over the frantic beating of her own heart. Just as the digital clock on her nightstand flipped to 3:07 a.m., the tapping started again. But this time, it was different. It wasn't the random searching tap, tap, tap from before. This was a rhythm, a deliberate, slow, and patient pattern. Tap, 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 tap. It was a code, a message. Emily squeezed her eyes shut, tears leaking from the corners, wetting her pillow. She hummed loudly to herself, trying to drown it out, but the sound seemed to drill directly into her mind. Then it stopped. The sudden silence was somehow more terrifying. She held her breath, listening. A new sound began, a soft, scraping rustle. It was the sound of the bed sheet sliding very slowly down the surface of the mirror. She couldn't help herself. She had to look. She turned her head just enough to see from one half-opened eye. The sheet had slid down halfway, revealing the top portion of the mirror. And in the darkness, she could see a silhouette, a head and shoulders. It was her reflection, but it wasn't mimicking her. It was just standing there, staring back at her from its prison of glass and silver. And then it moved on its own. The head in the mirror tilted, a gesture of cold curiosity. Emily watched, utterly paralyzed, as the reflection's hand slowly lifted and pressed its palm flat against the inside of the glass. It was a silent, desperate plea, or a threat. A small, choked sob escaped Emily's lips. At the sound, the reflection in the mirror did something that made her stomach drop. It smiled, that same wide, joyless smile from the first morning. It was a predator's smile. The next morning, the sheet was lying in a heap on the floor. The mirror was completely uncovered, looking perfectly normal in the morning sun. Emily's mother found her asleep, fully dressed on the couch downstairs. She couldn't bear to be in her room a moment longer. At school, her best friend Chloe immediately noticed the mark on her cheek and the dark circles under her eyes. "Whoa, Em, you look terrible. What's going on?" In the crowded, noisy hallway, the nightmare felt distant, silly. Emily leaned closer and whispered, "It's the mirror, Chloe. The one I bought. There's someone in it." Chloe, ever the pragmatist, frowned. "Okay, that's seriously creepy, but it's probably just like a weird optical illusion. Or you're having nightmares from watching too many scary movies.
It's not a nightmare, Emily insisted, her voice trembling. It touched me, Chloe. It left this mark. Chloe looked at the gray smudge, her skepticism wavering. Okay, look. If it's freaking you out that much, we'll get rid of it. Tonight, after your parents go to sleep, I'll come over. We'll take it down and smash it to pieces. Problem solved. A tiny flicker of hope ignited in Emily's chest. Smash it. Yes, that was the answer. Destroy the gateway. She nodded, gripping Chloe's hand. Okay, yes, thank you. But as she walked to her next class, a cold dread settled back into her bones. What if breaking the mirror didn't destroy what was inside? What if it just let it out? The rest of the school day passed in a blur for Emily. The hands on the classroom clock seemed frozen, each minute stretching into an eternity. All she could think about was the mirror and Chloe's plan to destroy it. The idea was terrifying, but the thought of another night trapped with that thing was infinitely worse. When the final bell rang, she practically ran home. The house was empty and quiet, a silence that felt heavy and watchful. She avoided her room, dumping her backpack in the hallway and heading straight to the kitchen. She needed to act normal to get through dinner without her parents suspecting a thing. Her mother noticed her picking at her food. "You're still not yourself, honey. Are you sure you're feeling okay?" "I'm fine, Mom," Emily said, forcing a smile. "Just a big history test tomorrow. Nerves." The lie tasted bitter, but it was necessary. Finally, her parents retreated to the living room to watch television. Emily texted Chloe, "Coast is almost clear. My parents are downstairs." Chloe's reply was instant. "On my way. Be there in 10. Stay calm." Those 10 minutes were the longest of Emily's life. She stood in the hallway, staring at her closed bedroom door. She could feel a faint, cold draft seeping out from underneath it. She pressed her ear to the wood, listening. Nothing. But the silence from within felt deliberate, ominous. A soft knock at the front door made her jump. She let Chloe in, her friend's face a mask of determined bravery. In her hands, she held a small, cloth-wrapped bundle. "I brought my dad's hammer," Chloe whispered, unwrapping it to reveal the heavy steel head, "and a black trash bag. We'll put all the pieces in there. No evidence." Emily led the way to her bedroom door, her hand shaking as she reached for the knob. She took a deep breath, pushed it open, and flipped the light switch. The room looked utterly normal. The bed was messy, clothes were on a chair, and the mirror hung on the wall, reflecting the two girls standing in the doorway. For a moment, Emily felt a surge of foolish relief. Maybe it was all in her head. Maybe she had imagined it all. "See?" Chloe said, her voice a little too loud, trying to fill the silence. "It's just a mirror. A creepy old mirror, but just a mirror. Let's get this over with." They stepped inside. Chloe marched right up to the mirror, hefting the hammer. "Ready? On 3. 1. Emily's eyes were locked on their reflection. Two scared girls in a bedroom. 2. The reflection of the room in the antique glass seemed to darken, as if a cloud had passed over a sun that wasn't there. 3. As Chloe swung the hammer back, Emily saw it. In the mirror, her own reflection was no longer looking at Chloe. It was looking directly at her, and her hand was not at its side. Her hand was raised, palm out, in a clear, desperate signal to stop. "No!" Emily screamed, but it was too late. The hammer flew forward, striking the center of the glass with a tremendous crack. But the glass didn't shatter. It splintered, a spiderweb of fractures radiating out from the point of impact. And from the center of that web, a single dark drop of liquid welled up and slowly dripped down the cracked surface. It wasn't water. It was thick and dark, like old blood. A low guttural whisper filled the room, seeming to come from the very walls themselves. It wasn't a word they could understand, but the meaning was clear.
It was a sound of pure, unadulterated rage. The bedroom light flickered violently and then went out, plunging them into darkness. The only light now came from the street lamp outside, casting long, distorted shadows through the cracked mirror. Chloe dropped the hammer, her bravado completely gone. "What was that?" she gasped. "Emily, what did we do?" From the center of the broken glass, a long, pale finger slowly emerged, pushing through one of the cracks, followed by another. The thing in the mirror was no longer content to just watch. It was coming out. The darkness in the room was absolute, a thick, suffocating blanket that seemed to swallow the faint light from the street lamp outside. For a moment, there was only silence, broken by the ragged sound of their own panicked breathing. Then the whispering started again. It was no longer a single voice, but a chorus of faint, overlapping murmurs, slithering out from the cracks in the mirror. "Chloe," Emily whimpered, her voice barely audible. She fumbled for her friend's hand in the dark, their icy fingers latching onto each other. The cracking sound came again, a wet, splintering noise. It wasn't the sound of glass breaking further, it was the sound of it stretching, warping. In the dim, fractured reflection, they saw the two pale hands from the mirror brace themselves against the broken surface. They were pushing. A long, dark crack split the wall around the mirror's frame with a sickening dry wood crunch. The air grew frigid, their breath puffing out invisible clouds. The scent of old roses and damp soil, thick and cloying, filled the room. "We have to get out of here," Chloe yelled, her voice high with terror. She pulled Emily toward the door, but Emily was rooted to the spot, her eyes wide with a horrifying realization. "It's not trying to get out, Chloe," she whispered. "It's pulling us in." As she said the words, a powerful, invisible force yanked them backward. Their feet slid across the carpet as if it were ice. They were being dragged toward the mirror. Chloe screamed, digging her heels in, but it was useless. The whispering grew louder, more insistent, now laced with a cruel, eager laughter. Emily's back slammed against the wall next to the mirror. The frame was no longer wood and glass. It felt like a gaping, cold mouth. She could see into the cracks now, and it wasn't her room on the other side. It was a distorted, gray version of her room, where the shadows writhed and moved on their own. Chloe was pulled against the other side of the frame, her face a mask of pure horror. "Emily, do something!" Acting on pure instinct, Emily grabbed the black plastic bag they had brought and threw it over the mirror's surface. The moment the plastic made contact, the force holding them vanished. They both stumbled forward, collapsing onto the floor. The room was silent. The whispering had stopped. Panting, they stared at the mirror, now concealed by the shifting black plastic. It was still. Too still. Did that work?" Chloe asked, her whole body trembling. Before Emily could answer, the trash bag rustled. A single, sharp fingernail slowly pierced through the plastic from the other side, tracing a long, deliberate line down its center. Then another, and another. It was calmly, methodically shredding its way through our flimsy barrier. "It's just playing with us," Emily said, the truth dawning on her with icy certainty. "It's not trapped. It never was. We're the ones who are trapped in here with it." The last of the plastic fell away in tatters. The mirror was whole again. Not a single crack remained on its perfectly smooth, smoky surface. And reflected in it, their room was empty. There was no sign of either her or Chloe. They were still in the room, but the mirror showed a world from which they had been erased. And standing in the center of that empty, reflected room was a tall, slender figure. It had Emily's hair, Emily's clothes, but its face was a smooth, featureless oval of pale skin. It stood perfectly still, its head tilted, observing the real world, observing them. It had finished mimicking her. Now, It was ready to replace her. The featureless face in the mirror was a void, a terrifying blank slate more horrifying than any monster Emily could have imagined. It was the absence of her, and that absence screamed louder than any sound. Chloe was the first to break the paralyzing silence. It's not showing us," she stammered, pointing a shaking finger at the unbroken glass. "We're not in the reflection." Emily's own terror was a cold knot in her stomach. Chloe was right. The reflection showed their room, their beds, their scattered belongings, all perfectly in place. But they were gone from it. It was as if they had never existed. The only occupant was that silent, faceless thing wearing her clothes. "It's stealing my face," Emily whispered, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. "That's what it wants. It's getting ready to be me." As if it heard her, the figure in the mirror slowly raised one of its pale, slender hands. It didn't mimic a movement Emily was making. This was its own, independent action. The hand rose until the fingertips were hovering just inches from the glass on its side. A whimper escaped Chloe's lips. "It's not inside the mirror anymore, is it? The mirror is just a window." The figure's head tilted again, a gesture of cold, clinical curiosity. Then its fingers pressed against the inside of the glass. Where they touched, the surface rippled like dark water, concentric circles spreading outwards. The solid glass was turning liquid. A single long finger began to push through the now viscous surface. It emerged into our world, followed by the rest of the hand, then a wrist. The air around it grew so cold that frost began to spiderweb across the nearby wall. The scent of old roses became overpowering, suffocating. "Run!" Chloe screamed, finding her voice again. She scrambled to her feet, pulling Emily up with her. They didn't head for the door this time. That felt too far, too exposed. Instead, they dove into Emily's closet, yanking the door shut behind them and plunging themselves into total blackness. They huddled together amidst the hanging clothes, the fabric smelling faintly of laundry detergent and now of their own fear. They could hear it from the other side of the thin closet door. A soft, wet sound. The sound of something pulling itself, slowly and deliberately, through the liquid surface of the mirror. Then silence, followed by a soft, bare footstep on the carpet. Step. Then another. Step. It was out. It was in the room with them. They held their breath, listening as the footsteps moved around the room. They were slow, exploratory. They heard the gentle rustle as it brushed a hand over her desk, a faint click as it picked up a hairbrush. It was learning her space, familiarizing itself with its new home. The footsteps stopped right outside the closet door. Emily and Chloe pressed their hands over their mouths, terrified that the sound of their own breathing would give them away. The doorknob began to turn, ever so slowly. They could see it moving in the darkness, a faint metallic glint. It stopped. A long, slow inhale came from the other side of the door, as if it were savoring a scent, their scent. Then a voice. It was Emily's voice, but it was wrong. It was flat, toneless, like a recording played back on a damaged machine. "Emily," it whispered through the door. "Come out. I just want to see." The doorknob began to jiggle, gently at first, then with more force. The flimsy lock they were holding onto with their own hands wouldn't hold for long. They were trapped. The thing that wanted to be her was on the other side of the door, and it was learning how to sound like her. The jiggling of the doorknob stopped as suddenly as it had begun. The silence that followed was somehow worse. It was a listening silence, a hunting silence. Inside the closet, pressed between winter coats and old sweaters, Emily and Chloe didn't dare to breathe. The only sound was the frantic, wild hammering of their own hearts, a drumbeat of terror they were sure could be heard through the door. Then they heard it, a new sound, a soft, scraping drag. It was the sound of a chair being pulled across the carpet in the center of the room. Then silence again. What was it doing? Why had it moved a chair? A minute passed, then another. The only thing that changed was the temperature. The freezing cold that had entered the room with the thing was beginning to seep under the closet door, wrapping around their ankles like icy water. Chloe, shivering violently from both cold and fear, leaned her head closer to Emily's ear. Her whisper was so faint it was barely a breath. "It's waiting for us." Emily nodded in the dark, understanding. It wasn't trying to break in anymore. It had all the time in the world. It was sitting in that chair, facing the closet, just waiting for them to crack. It was a predator, and they were its cornered prey. The helplessness of their situation crashed down on Emily. They couldn't stay in here forever. Her parents were asleep down the hall. What if they heard a noise and came to check? What if her mom opened this door, expecting to find her daughter, and found that thing instead? The thought was more terrifying than her own fate. "We can't stay here," Emily whispered back, her voice cracking. "Then what do we do?" Chloe's question was filled with a desperate hope that Emily had no way of fulfilling. Before Emily could form a thought, a new sound made them both jump. It was a low, melodic humming. The tune was simple, a nursery rhyme. It was the same lullaby Emily's mother used to sing to her when she was a little girl, a song that thing could not possibly know. But it was humming it, in her voice. The horror of that sound, the violation of that cherished memory, sent a fresh wave of nausea through Emily. It wasn't just studying her room, it was digging through her mind, her memories, pulling out the most personal pieces of her life to use as its tools. The humming stopped. Emily's voice, now slightly more practiced, slightly more fluent, called out from the center of the room. "Mom? Dad? Could you come here for a second? There's something in my closet. It's scratching at the door. I'm scared." A bolt of pure, undiluted panic shot through Emily. It was perfect. The slight tremor of fear in its voice was a masterful imitation. It was baiting a trap, using her own parents as the lure. Down the hall, they heard it, the creak of a floorboard, her father's muffled, sleepy voice. "Emily, you okay, sweetie?" The thing in the room responded, its voice pitching higher with feigned distress. "Daddy, please hurry!" That was it. They were out of time. Emily's mind raced, discarding one impossible plan after another. There was only one way out of the closet, and it led directly into its path. But they had to move, now. On 3, Emily breathed into Chloe's ear, her voice tight with a resolve she didn't feel. Chloe gave a tight, terrified nod in the darkness. Emily's hand found the closet doorknob, her skin stuck to the cold metal. "1," she whispered. They could hear her father's footsteps approaching down the hallway. 2. The thing in the chair began to hum the lullaby again, soft and triumphant. 3. Emily threw the closet door open. This scene that met their eyes was a frozen tableau of nightmare. The chair from her desk was placed squarely in the middle of the room, and sitting on it, perfectly still, was the figure. Its featureless face was turned toward the closet door, a silent, waiting sentinel. The street lamp from outside cast its silhouette into a sharp, menacing shape against the far wall. But worse than the figure itself was what was happening at the bedroom door. The doorknob was turning.
Her father was on the other side, about to enter. "No, Dad, don't!" Emily screamed, launching herself from the closet. The thing in the chair moved with impossible speed. It didn't stand up. It simply flowed from the chair to the floor, a blur of pale motion, and scuttled sideways into the deep shadows under Emily's bed, disappearing from view just as the bedroom door swung open. Mr. Thompson stood in the doorway, his hair messy from sleep, squinting in the dim light. He looked at Emily and Chloe, who were frozen in the center of the room, panting and wild-eyed. "Emily? What in the world is going on in here? I heard yelling." His voice was thick with sleep and confusion. Emily stared, speechless, at the empty chair. Then her eyes darted to the space under her bed. The darkness there seemed thicker now, a solid pool of black that drank the light. It was right there," Chloe stammered, pointing a trembling finger at the chair. "What was?" Mr. Thompson asked, a frown of concern deepening on his face. He flipped the main light switch. The overhead bulb flickered on, illuminating the room in a harsh, normal light. Everything was in its place. The mirror on the wall was just a mirror, reflecting a startled father and two terrified girls. There was no monster, no thing. "There was a person in here," Emily managed to say, her voice shaking uncontrollably. Mr. Thompson stepped fully into the room, his eyes scanning it. He walked over to the closet and looked inside. He even bent down, though not all the way, and took a quick glance under the bed. He straightened up, his expression softening into one of paternal sympathy. "Kids, I don't see anything. It was probably just a bad dream. You two must have spooked each other." He walked over and put a comforting hand on Emily's shoulder. She flinched. "It's okay, it happens. Why don't you both try to get some sleep? I'll leave the hall light on for you." He gave her shoulder a gentle squeeze, completely unaware that from the darkness beneath the bed springs, a pale, faceless head was now tilted upward, listening to the vibration of his voice, learning the cadence of a new person to imitate, learning what a father sounded like. "Good night, girls," he said, and closed the door behind him. The moment the door clicked shut, the overhead light buzzed and died, plunging them back into the gloom. They were alone again, but they weren't. From under the bed, a single pale hand slid out. It didn't move aggressively. It rested palm up on the carpet, as if waiting. Then the index finger slowly, deliberately curled inward, beckoning them closer. A whisper, a perfect imitation of her father's sleepy, concerned tone, slithered out from the darkness beneath the bedsprings. "It's okay, Emily. Come, closer." The voice from under the bed was a perfect, sickening copy of her father's. It was using the very sound of safety to lure her into the trap. Emily and Chloe stood frozen, their eyes locked on the pale, beckoning hand resting on the carpet. "Don't listen to it," Chloe whispered, her voice trembling. "It's not your dad." The hand, as if hearing her, slowly retracted back into the shadows beneath the bed. There was a soft, shuffling sound. It was moving, changing position. Then, from the other side of the bed, the thing emerged. It didn't crawl out. It rose. It flowed up from the floor in one smooth, unnatural motion, as if it were being lifted by invisible strings. It now stood at the foot of the bed, its blank face turned toward them. The street lamp's glow seemed to be absorbed by its featureless skin, giving it a faint, ghastly luminescence. It was still wearing Emily's clothes, but its form seemed less solid now, more like a silhouette filled with shifting smoke. It took a step forward.
then another. Its movements were no longer the clumsy scuttling from before. They were becoming more fluid, more confident, more human. It was learning. With every passing minute, it was learning how to move, how to sound, how to be. It stopped in the center of the room, halfway between them and the door. It was blocking their only escape. Emily's eyes darted toward the mirror on the wall. Her breath caught in her throat. The reflection was no longer an empty room. The reflection showed the room exactly as it was in reality. Two terrified girls, and the tall, pale figure standing between them and the door. But in the mirror world, the thing had a face. It was Emily's face, but it was a cruel, twisted version of it. The eyes were too wide, the smile too full of sharp, needle-like teeth. The reflection was showing them its true intention, its final form. The thing in their world raised its hand again, not to beckon, but to point. Hissed, "Your face is mine." It took another step forward, its arm still outstretched, its finger pointing like a weapon. The temperature in the room plummeted again. The frost on the wall spread, crawling toward the ceiling with a faint crackling sound. "It wants to touch you. It needs to touch you to finish it, to steal your face completely." Emily stumbled backward, pulling Chloe with her until her back hit the wall next to the closet. There was nowhere else to go. The thing continued its slow, deliberate advance, its pointing finger unwavering. The gap between them was closing. In moments, it would be close enough to reach out and make contact. And Emily knew with a certainty that turned her bones to ice that that cold, pale finger touched her skin one more time, the transfer would be complete. The thing would wear her face, and she would be the one erased, trapped forever in the silent, gray world behind the glass. The thing was only a few feet away now, its pointing finger aimed like a blade at Emily's heart. The air was so cold it burned their lungs with every ragged breath. The twisted version of her own face leered from the mirror, a silent promise of the horror to come. "Your face is mine." The chorus of whispers hissed again, closer now. Emily's back was pressed against the wall. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The thing's finger was inches from her cheek, the cold radiating from it like an open freezer. She could see the pores on its pale skin, see the subtle tremble in its hand as it reached for its prize. In that final, desperate second, a single coherent thought cut through the paralyzing fear. The mirror. The mirror was its gateway, its anchor. It wasn't just a window, it was a part of it. As the icy fingertip brushed a stray strand of hair on her cheek, Emily didn't flinch away. Instead, she ducked. She dropped to the floor, sliding out of its reach just as its finger touched the wall where her face had been. The thing let out a shriek of pure frustration, a sound like shattering glass and tearing fabric. It spun around, its blank face somehow conveying a universe of rage. "Chloe, the mirror!" Emily yelled from the floor. "It's not the thing! The mirror is the thing!" Chloe, galvanized by Emily's sudden action, didn't hesitate. She grabbed the heavy textbook from Emily's desk and hurled it with all her might. But she didn't aim for the figure. She aimed for the wall next to the mirror. The book struck the electrical outlet with a crunch of plastic and a shower of sparks. The small, glowing power light on the Wi-Fi router plugged into the same socket blinked and died. For a split second, nothing happened. Then the thing in the middle of the room convulsed. It staggered backwards, its form flickering like a corrupted video file. The ghastly luminescence coming from its skin winked in and out. The whispering became a distorted digital screech. "It's the power!" Emily shouted, scrambling to her feet. "The router! The clock! It's using them!" She now understood. The mirror wasn't just glass and silver. It was a device, a receiver, and it needed power to maintain the connection, to keep its monstrous passenger solid in our world. The thing was recovering, its form stabilizing as it drew energy from another source in the room. Its head swiveled toward Emily, its blank face a mask of pure, undiluted hatred. It knew she understood, and it knew it had to finish its work now before they could do any more damage. It lunged for her, no longer slow and deliberate, but with the speed of a striking snake. Its hands, now with fingers like sharpened ice, reached for her throat. The thing lunged, a blur of pale fury. Its sharp, cold fingers closed around Emily's throat, cutting off her air. The world began to swim in a dizzying haze of black spots. Over its shoulder, she could see its triumphant reflection in the mirror. The twisted, sharp-toothed version of herself was smiling, its hands miming the act of strangulation. "Let her go!" Chloe screamed. She didn't go for the thing itself. Instead, she grabbed the desk lamp, ripping its plug from the wall socket. The room plunged into a deeper darkness, lit only by the faint, unwavering glow of the mirror and the thing that held Emily. The thing flinched, its grip loosening for a fraction of a second. It was drawing power from everything. Emily, gasping for a shred of air, kicked out wildly, her foot connected with her bedside table. The digital clock, its numbers blazing 3:33 a.m. The thing lunged, a blur of pale fury. Its sharp, cold fingers closed around Emily's throat, cutting off her air. The world began to swim in a dizzying haze of black spots. Over its shoulder, she could see its triumphant reflection in the mirror. The twisted, sharp-toothed version of herself was smiling, its hands miming the act of strangulation. "Let her go!" Chloe screamed. She didn't go for the thing itself. Instead, she grabbed the desk lamp, ripping its plug from the wall socket. The room plunged into a deeper darkness, lit only by the faint, unwavering glow of the mirror and the thing that held Emily. The thing flinched, its grip loosening for a fraction of a second. It was drawing power from everything. Emily, gasping for a shred of air, kicked out wildly, her foot connected with her bedside table. The digital clock, its numbers blazing 3:33 a.m., wobbled and fell to the floor with a plastic crack. Its light died instantly. A tremor ran through the thing's body. Its form flickered more violently. It was working. "The router, the TV, anything with a light," Emily choked out, clawing at the icy hands on her neck. Chloe didn't need to be told twice. She became a whirlwind of destruction in the dark. She yanked the power strip for the computer, silencing its low hum. She unplugged the small flat-screen TV across the room, its standby light vanishing. With each severed connection, the thing weakened. Its grip became less solid, its hands feeling more like cold mist than flesh and bone. The whispering became a desperate, fading static. The reflection in the mirror began to distort, the monstrous face melting like wax, its triumphant smile dissolving into a silent scream. "The mirror," Emily gasped, finally breaking free and stumbling backwards. "We have to break the connection completely." She looked around frantically for a tool, her eyes landing on the old, heavy typewriter she used as a decoration on her bookshelf. It was the only thing in the room that had no power, no light, no modern connection. As the thing writhed on the floor, its form dissolving into tendrils of pale smoke, Emily heaved the typewriter into her arms. She didn't look at the thing. She didn't look at its dying reflection. She turned her back on it, and with a final, desperate cry, she swung the heavy metal object directly into the center of the antique mirror. The sound was not of shattering glass, but of a deep, resonant gong, as if she had struck a giant bell. A wave of force exploded outwards, throwing both her and Chloe to the ground. The window rattled in its frame. For a moment, every light in the house flickered. Then, silence. A deep, true silence. the kind that comes after a storm has passed. Slowly, shakily, Emily pushed herself up. The mirror was gone, not broken, but gone. A clean, empty rectangle of wall was all that remained. The floor was bare. There was no glass, no twisted frame, no trace of smoke. The freezing cold was already receding, replaced by the normal, comfortable temperature of the house. The mark on her cheek was gone. Down the hall, they heard her father's groggy voice call out, "What was that noise?" Emily looked at Chloe, who was staring back, her eyes wide with shock and dawning relief. They were safe. It was over. Weeks later, life had returned to a fragile normalcy. Emily's room was redecorated, the wall where the mirror had hung now covered with a large tapestry. She never spoke of it to her parents. They wouldn't have understood. But sometimes, in the dead of night, when the house was quiet and the world was asleep, Emily would wake up with a start. And from the screen of her smartphone, lying face up on her nightstand, she would sometimes catch her reflection. And for a single, heart-stopping moment, she could swear she saw something. A flicker of a smile that wasn't hers, a shadow in the eyes that wasn't her own, before the image settled back into normalcy. The mirror was gone, but glass was everywhere. And in a world of screens and reflections, some doors, once opened, can never be fully closed. They can only be watched from the corner of your eye forever.